There's a million and one different ways to bind your quilt. We've just created a really neat video showing some of those ways to machine and hand bind. We used the binding tool template in that video. Check out this snippet. We're calling it a quick tip to teach you just how to use that binding tool. As we're getting ready to use our binding tool, and remember, if you need any of the supplies, there's a wonderful link in the description below. You can click on that, get everything you need here. The key to this tool is we're going to use it to cut both sides of our binding. I have a 12-inch opening I've left here, and there's a printed side with the instructions right on the tool. So we always want to make sure we can read this, even if it's slightly upside down. So I take my first end and I'm butting it up to that seam where I started, and then I'm opening up my fabric, and I am using a Sharpie because I'm working on the interior, and I'm going to go ahead and make a line right where that black line is, the black line right there on my marking tool. Now I've gotten in the habit of cutting as soon as I've marked so that I don't have to try to remember which side was which. So let me bring that in a little bit better spot for you to see. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay the blunt end right there. And what I'm thinking to myself right now as I'm cutting this is that this bottom edge is my longest edge. That's going to make sense here in a second. Okay, I'm going to slide this back in. If you remember, I had this set just like this and I marked it. So now I'm going to rotate this around like this. So I didn't flip it, I just rotated it. And I'm marking using the same line on the interior. But I used to do an awful lot of construction, so I talk about long points and short points and those kinds of things. And I want to make sure I get them right. So think about it. If this line comes over here, I'm going to make a little sketch that shows me that line needs to go in that direction. And that way, because if I cut this incorrectly, I'm going to be disappointed. I'm going to have to add it back on. Now as I come down here, I'm going to bring this up, and you'll notice I'm cutting it following kind of that sketch I made. Sorry about the arm in the way there. It's a little bit upside down for me the way that I have this set up at the moment. And the cool thing about the binding tool is it also includes the little flat edge that will help us line up our bindings when we come back together. So now I'm grabbing my bindings and I'm making sure they're right sides together, and I still need to join this seam, and it will basically be that 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I kind of wrestle with the quilt and the binding as I head myself towards my sewing machine. But then as I get ready to drop the presser foot and the needle, I make sure everything's nice and organized. Again, using those flat edges to really line it up. And that is all you need to know about the binding tool. Whoop, still struggling a bit. And then we'll finish putting this on the back side of the quilt with that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I'll stop talking so we can get it right. Okay, here we go. Make sure I've got the end captured, so I backstitch. And I just love the way this works out each and every time. It's just fantastic. So what's going to happen here, as I pull it, you can see that I've got a beautiful bias there, lays nice and flat. A lot of times folks will take the time to press that. You can even press it right on your quilt if you like, because your quilt makes a really nice ironing surface. Be careful if you have a cutting mat below. You don't want to iron your cutting mat. And now we just need to finish fastening the binding to the back side of the quilt. So I'm going back to where we left off when we had that pin up there. And away we go.